Hello and welcome to the English Podcast Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're diving deep into something I've been getting a lot of questions about lately.
Oh, yeah.
Which is how to practice speaking English when you're all alone.
Okay.
Now, I know that might sound a little strange,
Right.
like talking to the wall, but stick with me because it can actually be surprisingly effective.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack all this, I've got language learning specialist Sarah with me.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thrilled to be here, Mike. I think it's always great to explore ways to maximize independent learning, and trust me, solo practice is a game changer for a lot of people.
So what you're saying is I can ditch the language partner
Yeah.
and actually improve my speaking all by myself.
Yeah,
Sign me up.
absolutely.
It almost feels like a secret weapon, less pressure, and definitely more flexible for my schedule.
Think of it like a solo workout at the gym.
Okay.
You're in control, you're focusing on your own pace and goals, and speaking practice is the same idea.
Okay, I'm liking this analogy already. Let's jump right into these solo speaking strategies.
Yeah.
One that caught my attention is this idea of starting to speak right from the beginning of your learning journey.
Okay.
Like, shouldn't we master all this grammar and vocabulary first?
It's a common myth that you need a solid foundation before speaking. Actually, the opposite is true.
Oh.
Speaking helps cement those grammar and vocabulary concepts that you're learning, and it pushes you to think directly in English instead of translating in your head.
Okay.
Plus, think about it. A 2016 study by the University of Michigan found that learners who started speaking right away, even with very limited vocabulary, they actually outperformed those who waited, and they saw a 20% boost in fluency and a 15% improvement in grammar accuracy.
Whoa. 20%. That's huge.
Yeah,
So starting to speak early actually gives you a learning advantage.
it does.
I wish I had known that when I was struggling through Spanish verb conjugations.
Right.
It's like I was stuck in the textbook and then froze up when I tried to have an actual conversation.
You're not alone there, Mike, and that brings us to another great advantage of practicing solo.
Okay.
You eliminate the fear of making mistakes in front of others. You can experiment, you can stumble, you can try again without feeling judged.
Right.
It's a safe space to really play with the language.
Taking the pressure off is always a good thing.
Yes.
Speaking of playing with language,
Yeah.
let's talk about this technique called shadowing. What's the deal with that?
Shadowing is all about mimicking native speakers.
Okay.
Find an audio or video clip that you enjoy, maybe a scene from your favorite movie or a podcast, and repeat what you hear. Try to match the speaker's pronunciation rhythm and intonation.
So I'm basically turning myself into an English parrot.
Kind of.
But how does simply repeating things help me speak better?
It's more than just repetition, Mike. Think about how children naturally learn to speak. They listen to and imitate those around them, picking up the nuances of the language. Shadowing replicates that process, helping you internalize the natural flow and sounds of English, and it trains your mouth to move in the right way.
That's pretty cool. It's like absorbing the language through osmosis.
Yeah.
So shadowing helps with pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
But what about expanding my vocabulary?
Oh.
Any tips for building my word bank solo?
Definitely, instead of memorizing words in isolation, try sentence mining.
Sentence mining.
This means learning entire sentences. So you grasp words in context, you understand their subtle nuances, and you learn how they're used naturally.
Sounds a lot more useful than flashcards. But how do I even choose which sentences to mine?
Think about your specific goals.
Okay.
What situations do you want to communicate in?
Right.
Find sentences that are relevant to those situations. So if you're learning English for travel, you might find phrases related to ordering food or asking for directions or booking a hotel.
So it's like building this personalized phrase book tailored to my own needs. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny when I hear native English speakers try to speak other languages, they often have this slightly off accent, like they're reading from a textbook.
Right. And that's because they often focus too much on individual words and grammar, missing the overall flow.
Right.
Here's a thought. Listening to how native English speakers pronounce words in your native language can actually give you valuable insights into the unique sounds of English.
That's a fascinating perspective. It's like using my own language as a decoder ring
Yeah.
for English pronunciation.
Uh-huh.
Okay, here's one I know a lot of people are going to love.
Okay.
Singing along to English songs.
Yes.
Way more fun than drilling grammar, right?
It is.
But can belting out tunes actually improve my speaking?
You bet. Singing is fantastic for language learning. It trains your mouth muscles, exposes you to slang and idioms you might not find in a textbook, and it gives you a feel for the rhythm and intonation of natural speech. Plus, you're more likely to remember words and phrases set to music.
I can definitely attest to learning some interesting phrases from songs. Maybe a few I shouldn't repeat here.
Right.
But hey, it's all part of the cultural immersion, right?
Exactly. It's about expanding your vocabulary and absorbing cultural insights in an engaging way. And you can apply this same concept to other audio forms like reading aloud alongside an audiobook.
Oh,
It's like a synchronized reading session that helps you match your pace and pronunciation with a native speaker.
Okay, that's a great tip. So we've covered techniques for pronunciation and vocabulary.
Yeah.
What about making English a part of my daily life even when I'm alone?
Okay.
Any suggestions for solo activities that help me immerse myself?
Now we're getting to the exciting part. You can transform your daily routine into a learning opportunity. For starters, switch your phone or computer settings to English.
That's a simple yet brilliant one. I did that a while back, and it's amazing how much vocabulary you pick up just from navigating menus and apps.
Right, you're constantly exposed to new words in a practical context. Another great tool is a dedicated English notebook. Jot down new words, grammar rules, or interesting phrases you come across.
I'm a big notebook fan, is writing things down actually better than typing them on my phone.
Absolutely. Handwriting engages different parts of your brain, making those words and phrases stick with you better. It's like a mental workout for your English muscles.
And speaking of workouts, we can't forget about YouTube.
Yes.
It's a goldmine for free English learning resources, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. There are countless channels with structured lessons, grammar explanations, pronunciation tips, even authentic examples of everyday language use. You're bound to find something tailored to your level and interests.
It's like having a personal tutor right in my pocket.
And if you crave interaction, there are language exchange websites where you can connect with native English speakers who are learning your language, and you can practice conversation skills together.
A win-win for everyone involved.
Exactly.
Okay, let's circle back to vocabulary expansion.
Okay.
Flashcard apps are everywhere these days.
They are?
Are they worth the hype?
Flashcards can be helpful, especially for memorizing individual words. But don't get bogged down trying to learn thousands of words. Focus on the most frequently used ones first. You can understand and communicate a lot with a surprisingly small vocabulary.
That's good to know. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Yes.
So how about something a bit more entertaining? Can I actually learn English from watching Netflix?
Without a doubt, watching movies and TV shows immerses you in the language, helps you pick up natural expressions, and exposes you to different accents and dialects. For an extra boost, use subtitles.
I love subtitles, but I sometimes catch myself just reading them and not paying attention to the spoken language. Any tips for avoiding that trap?
Try using English subtitles instead of your native language. This forces you to engage with the spoken words actively. There are also apps like Lingopie with features designed for language learners like dual subtitles and integrated flashcards. You can even pause to look up words.
That's impressive. Technology is definitely making language learning more accessible and engaging. Okay, before we move on, I want to acknowledge that practicing alone can be tough sometimes. Any advice for staying motivated and making it a habit?
Remember that language learning is a journey, not a race. Be patient with yourself. Set realistic goals, celebrate your progress, and try different techniques to keep things fun. Small, consistent efforts lead to big results in the long run.
Consistency and patience are key.
Yes, they are. It's like any skill, some days you'll be firing on all cylinders and others you'll just need to put in the work.
Right.
The important thing is to show up consistently, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
So no excuses for skipping a practice session.
Exactly.
One technique we haven't touched on yet is simply reading aloud.
Okay.
I used to do that all the time as a kid, bringing stories to life with different voices and accents. But does reading aloud actually help with speaking skills?
Absolutely. It helps you practice pronunciation, intonation, and pacing, and it also forces you to pay attention to sentence structure and the flow of language. Think of it as a dress rehearsal for real conversations.
I love that, a dress rehearsal. And since we're on the topic of rehearsal, what about memorizing speeches or monologues?
Okay.
Could that be a helpful technique for solo speaking practice?
It certainly can be, especially if you choose material that speaks to you. It allows you to really focus on pronunciation, intonation, and delivering those lines with emotion and impact. Plus, it's a great way to build confidence and get comfortable projecting your voice.
It's like giving yourself a mini performance, a chance to really own the language.
Precisely. And you can record yourself to identify areas for improvement. Speaking of recording yourself, have you ever tried dictating your thoughts instead of writing them down?
Dictating like talking to my phone and having it transcribe my words.
That's the one. It might feel a little odd at first. but it's an excellent way to practice speaking clearly and concisely. It forces you to think in English and formulate your thoughts in a way that makes sense when spoken aloud.
I'm picturing some hilarious autocorrect mishaps along the way, but I can see how it would be a fun and challenging exercise.
It can be surprisingly helpful for grammar and punctuation, too. You have to think about where to pause, how to structure your sentences, and how to use punctuation marks like commas and periods to create the right flow.
It's like multitasking for your English brain.
Right.
Okay, this next technique sounds a bit quirky, but I'm intrigued. Tell me about the rubber duck method.
Have you ever noticed how explaining things to someone else, even if it's a pet or an inanimate object, helps you clarify your thoughts?
Right.
That's the idea behind the rubber duck method. You choose an object, a rubber duck, a houseplant, anything, and you pretend you're teaching it something in English.
So I could literally explain the plot of my favorite movie to a rubber duck.
Precisely. It might sound silly, but it's a great way to practice organizing your thoughts, explaining concepts, and using language naturally and engagingly.
I'm all for embracing the silliness if it helps me improve. It's like giving a private lecture to a very attentive audience. And speaking of being attentive, we can't forget about the importance of listening. But how can we actively practice listening when we're alone?
Podcasts are fantastic for this. There's a podcast for every interest imaginable, so you can find something you enjoy and listen while you're commuting, exercising, or even doing chores.
Podcasts are like a portable English classroom. I love how they make learning feel like entertainment.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to branch out and try different types of podcasts. You can listen to news podcasts to stay informed, interview podcasts to hear different perspectives, or storytelling podcasts to get lost in a narrative.
Variety is the spice of life, and it's definitely the spice of language learning. We've talked about movies, podcasts, YouTube. It seems like there are endless possibilities for solo English practice.
There are.
But with so many options, it can feel overwhelming. Any advice for choosing the right resources and creating a plan that feels manageable?
It all starts with setting clear goals. What aspects of English do you want to focus on? Pronunciation, vocabulary, fluency, grammar. Once you know your goals, you can choose resources that target those specific areas.
So it's like creating a personalized English learning menu. We get to pick and choose the activities that best suit our needs and interests.
That's the idea, and don't be afraid to experiment if something feels too challenging or not engaging enough. Try something else. The important thing is to find activities that keep you motivated and excited to learn.
So finding that spark, that joy in the learning process is key. We've covered so much ground today, Sarah, from shadowing and sentence mining to talking to rubber ducks.
We have.
It's amazing how many creative ways there are to practice English speaking alone.
And these are just a few ideas to get you started. The most important thing is to find techniques that resonate with you, incorporate them into your daily routine, and keep practicing consistently.
Consistency is key, for sure. It's about making English a part of our lives, not just a subject we study.
Exactly. The more you practice speaking, the more confident you'll become, and that confidence will spill over into other areas of your life, not just your English skills.
It's about finding your voice.
Yeah.
Both literally and figuratively.
Yes.
But before we get too philosophical here, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, the fear of making mistakes.
Okay.
It can be a real roadblock for learners, especially when they're practicing alone. Any advice for overcoming that fear and embracing those inevitable stumbles?
It's so common to fear making mistakes, but the reality is mistakes are a natural part of learning. Think of it like a baby learning to walk. They fall countless times, but they don't give up. They keep trying until they master it. Language learning is the same way. Those stumbles, those mispronunciations, those grammatical errors, they're all part of the learning curve.
So it's all about embracing those oops moments and learning from them.
Precisely. And when you're practicing alone, you have the freedom to make mistakes without judgment.
Yeah.
Use that freedom to experiment, try new things, and push yourself beyond your comfort zone.
It's a safe space to play with the language and figure out what works best for you.
Exactly. And remember, every mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow. Don't let the fear of messing up hold you back from speaking up and expressing yourself.
Such wise words, Sarah. We've covered techniques, resources, motivation. It feels like we've explored every nook and cranny of solo English speaking practice.
I think so.
Is there anything else learners should remember as they embark on this journey?
Here's a final thought. Don't underestimate the power of your environment.
You mean surrounding myself with English books and movies?
That's part of it, but it's also about cultivating a positive and supportive mindset. Celebrate your victories, learn from your slip-ups, and above all, enjoy the process. Learning a language should be a joyous experience, not a chore.
It's about weaving English into the fabric of our lives, not just treating it like a subject to be conquered.
That's it, and that's how you truly achieve fluency, by making English a natural and enjoyable part of your daily routine.
What a fantastic way to think about it. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Sarah, your insights on solo English practice have been incredibly valuable.
The pleasure was all mine, Mike. I always enjoy sharing tips on how to make language learning fun and accessible for everyone.
And for all our listeners out there, we hope you feel inspired to start your own solo speaking practice. Choose a few techniques that resonate with you, set some achievable goals, and most importantly, remember to have fun along the way.
Small steps, consistent effort, and a positive mindset. That's the recipe for success in language learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And before we sign off, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the English Podcast Lab's YouTube channel for more valuable language learning tips. Until next time, happy learning, everyone. For those of you listening, remember this: you don't need a classroom or a conversation partner to make real progress in English.
No, you don't.
Your solo journey can be just as rewarding and effective.
Absolutely. And as you embark on this journey, remember that fluency isn't about reaching some elusive state of perfection. It's about communication, about expressing yourself, connecting with others, and experiencing the world through the lens of another language.
Beautifully put, Sarah. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
The pleasure was all mine, Mike. I'm always happy to talk about language learning.
Yeah.
And especially the incredible power of solo practice.
And for all our listeners out there, we hope you feel inspired to start your own solo speaking practice. Choose a few techniques that resonate with you, set some achievable goals, and most importantly, remember to have fun along the way.
Small steps, consistent effort, and a positive mindset. That's the recipe for success in language learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And before we sign off, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the English Podcast Lab's YouTube channel for more valuable language learning tips. Until next time, happy learning, everyone. Right.